I thought I was helping my wife rebuild her life, paying off her debts, giving her peace. But while I was cleaning up her past, she was planning a future without me in it. When I first met Claire, she carried herself like someone who had seen better days and intended to see them again. There was something proud in her voice, but also tiredness behind her eyes. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue. I just turned 52. She was 45 and recently divorced, though she didn't mention much about it. We hit it off over small things. Both liked old blues, preferred strong coffee over fancy lattes. Both had grown kids who rarely called, but always needed something. It felt easy, comfortable. By the third date, Claire admitted she'd been through a rough financial patch. Her ex had left her with credit card debt and a house that needed more repairs than she could afford. She didn't ask for help, not directly, but I could tell it weighed on her. "I don't need a savior," she said one night while we sat watching a storm roll in from the porch. "I just need a little peace." I understood that, more than she knew. My last relationship had collapsed under the weight of constant fighting over money. I was stable now, emotionally and financially. I had my modest home, a retirement fund, and a consulting job I could do from anywhere. I didn't need excitement. I needed someone real. We married quietly 10 months later. A courthouse ceremony. Just the two of us and two witnesses we barely knew. It felt right. Simple. Shortly after the honeymoon, a week in the Smoky Mountains, she came to me with tears in her eyes and a folder full of papers. "This is everything," she said. "I don't want to start this marriage with secrets." It was a detailed list of her outstanding debts, credit cards, medical bills, a small personal loan. Just over $43,000 in total. "I've been making payments, but it's eating me alive," she said. "I can't sleep. I'm not asking you to take care of it. I just wanted you to know." Maybe I should have paused, thought it over, talked to an advisor. Instead, I said, "Let me take care of it." She cried. I held her. We made love that night, like people who believed in fresh starts. Within 2 months, I'd paid off everything. I liquidated a low-performing investment, used some savings, and made sure she was debt-free before Christmas. I even surprised her with a clean credit report in a frame. "Your fresh start," I told her. Claire seemed lighter after that. Happier. She started going out more, girls' nights, painting classes, gym sessions. I was glad to see her smiling again. I figured that's what healing looked like. But healing shouldn't include secrecy. It started small. A second phone she kept for work. A password change on her laptop. A locked drawer in the guest room. I told myself not to pry. I respected her space. She'd earned it, hadn't she? And then came the mail. A letter addressed to her, from a real estate agent. I only noticed it because she left it on the kitchen table. The subject line was visible: pre-approval status for condo application, West Ridge property. We hadn't talked about moving. We hadn't even joked about it. That night, I asked her, "You thinking about buying property?" She didn't flinch. "Oh, that was nothing. Just some junk mail from when I looked into refinancing my car." I nodded. And later that week, I quietly began collecting small things, screenshots of strange emails she'd printed, receipts for furniture I'd never seen, and charges to a moving company on a joint card. Then quickly refunded. I didn't confront her. I didn't change the way I acted. But something had changed in me. Claire still kissed me goodnight, still laughed at my jokes. But there was distance. A kind of overcompensation that only someone hiding something puts on. Every smile was a little too bright. Every conversation a little too polished. Then, one morning, I noticed a text flash on her phone as she reached for her keys. "Can't wait to see you this weekend." Counting the days. She snatched the phone quickly. "Spam. Spam, huh?" I didn't say a word. Instead, I called an attorney I trusted, a no-nonsense woman named Joan who had helped a friend through a nasty divorce. We talked for 2 hours. She told me what to watch for, what to record, what to copy, what to move out of joint access. "You don't want revenge," she said. "You want position. You want proof. You want the clean hand." I followed her advice. Claire had no idea. While she was booking spa weekends and lying about conferences, I was preparing. Calmly, quietly. 1 month later, I would uncover everything. But I'll tell you about that in the next chapter. The day I found the folder, I was just looking for tax documents. Claire kept most of the household papers in a filing cabinet in the guest room, the one she'd slowly turned into her art space. I wasn't snooping, at least not at first. But when I reached in for a file labeled Utilities, something slipped behind the drawer. I reached deeper, and pulled out a red leather folder. No label, no dust, like it had been handled often. Inside, 2 sets of printed emails, a property lease agreement, and copies of wire transfers. The emails were between Claire and someone named TM. At first, they looked like typical back and forth between old friends. But then I saw the subject lines. Furniture confirmed for March 5th. Condo ready ahead of schedule. You're doing the right thing, babe. There was no confusion. She wasn't planning a surprise for me. She wasn't decorating a second home for us. Claire was planning a life I wasn't part of, with someone else. The lease agreement was for a condo in a nearby town. A quiet place with art galleries and wine shops. The kind Claire had once said was too pretentious for her taste. The lease was in her name, with a second emergency contact listed as Tanner Michaels. No mention of me, not even as a backup. But the most damning pieces were the wire transfers. She'd sent several $2,000 payments to someone labeled only TM, personal. The dates lined up with the months I'd been working extra consulting hours to pad our savings. I sat back in the chair, folder in my lap, and exhaled through my nose. Not out of anger, out of clarity. It was one of those moments where everything clicks into place. Her longer showers. The fresh manicure every weekend. The new phone she said came free with her gym membership. All the girls' nights. All the don't wait up evenings. It was all choreography, and I'd been financing it. I didn't confront her. That wasn't the plan anymore. Joan had made it clear, emotions are expensive in court. I scanned everything, photographed the folder in place, put it all back exactly how I found it. That night, she came home cheerful, carrying Thai takeout and humming to herself. Figured you could use a break from leftovers, she said. I smiled. You read my mind. We ate together. We laughed. She told me about her friend Miranda's cat getting sick, how she might help her run errands. I nodded, even asked if she needed help. It was surreal, sitting across from someone you once loved, knowing they were orchestrating your exit. I made copies of every financial document, moved my personal savings into a separate, untouchable account, froze the joint credit card, rewrote my will, set up a digital log of every suspicious activity, date-stamped and verified. All quiet, all by the book. The next weekend, she said she was going to a wellness retreat with some women from her art class. She packed light, wore perfume she hadn't used in months, and left without a goodbye kiss. She came back 2 days later with a tan, a silk scarf, and a shopping bag from a local boutique. I noticed a receipt in the bag, 2 dinner entrees, a bottle of wine, and a dessert for 2. The bill was signed by TM. I added that to the file. A week later, she left her tablet charging in the kitchen. Claire rarely let it out of her sight. I don't believe in invading privacy, but at this point, I wasn't dealing with a partner. I was dealing with someone actively deceiving me while using our shared resources to fund her exit. I opened the browser. She'd been looking at engagement rings. Not for me. There was a thread of emails with a jeweler titled Second Time Lucky. She was requesting a custom inscription. Yours always, C. That night, I barely slept. Not because of heartbreak. That had burned out the week before. What kept me awake was the realization that I'd been the safety net, the financial springboard, the emotionally stable filler husband, until she found something shinier. By the end of that month, the last puzzle piece fell into place. Claire had scheduled a private notary visit while I was supposed to be out of town to update her medical directive and financial power of attorney. I wasn't listed on either. Instead, Tanner Michaels was being granted access to her health decisions, her bank accounts, and her emergency contacts. She hadn't filed yet. She hadn't made the move. But she was ready. And so was I. I scheduled a meeting with Joan, submitted all documents, and signed the petition for divorce. On advice, I also filed for financial misconduct, given that marital assets had been misused without disclosure. Claire came home to a manila envelope on the dining room table. A single sheet inside. You build a new life while I paid for your past. Now, you can enjoy it, with whatever's left. She called me 6 times that night. I didn't answer. The real pain wasn't betrayal. It was that I'd willingly ignored the signs. Because I wanted to believe that love was enough to make someone honest. It's not. But that's a lesson I'm glad I learned when I still had something to protect. The morning after she found the envelope, Claire didn't go to work. I heard her pacing the hallway while I sipped my coffee on the back porch. I knew that sound. It was the sound of someone rehearsing a story they didn't expect to tell so soon. She finally came out, barefoot, with messy hair and no makeup, a rare thing for Claire. Normally, even on Saturdays, she was put together by 8 a.m. "We need to talk," she said, standing by the screen door. I didn't move. "Go ahead." She stepped outside, but didn't sit. "Look," she began, "I know how this looks. But it's not what you think." I almost laughed at the irony. That line, the one cheaters always use when they realize they've been caught. It's universal. "Then explain it to me," I said calmly. "What part of the second phone, the secret condo, or the jewelry purchase is the misunderstanding?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a second, I thought she'd confess. Instead, she dropped into the chair opposite me and looked away. "I was scared," she said finally. "You're so in control all the time. So calm. I didn't know how to tell you that I felt lost." I nodded. "And you found yourself in another man's apartment?" "That wasn't fair." I cut her off. "No, Claire. What wasn't fair was using my money to get out of debt while planning a future behind my back. I didn't mean for it to get that far." "Didn't mean for what? The lease? The wire transfers? Naming someone else on your medical documents? Or the custom inscription on the ring?" Her silence told me everything. "I was going to tell you," she mumbled. "When? Before or after the engagement photos?" That one landed. She flinched. "I panicked," she said. "I didn't think you'd understand. You were always so content, and I wasn't. I didn't know how to say that without blowing everything up. So instead, you tried to light a fuse behind my back." She finally looked me in the eye. "I never wanted to hurt you. You just didn't care if I got hurt." She started to cry. But I'd already seen those tears, when she showed me the debt, when she begged for a fresh start, when she promised we were a team. I wasn't falling for it again. "I've already filed," I said. "You'll be served officially this week. I've separated the accounts. My attorney has copies of everything. I've also frozen the shared assets until a judge can divide them." Claire's voice shifted, sharper now. "You can't just take everything." "I'm not taking anything. I'm protecting what's mine. What you tried to exploit." She stood up abruptly. "This is unbelievable. You act like I'm some criminal." I stayed seated. "No, Claire. I act like a man who finally sees clearly." She stormed inside and slammed the door. I didn't follow. I knew better. The next week, the real unraveling began. First, her boyfriend, Tanner, ghosted her. I only know because she left her phone on the counter one day while she was in the shower. I didn't read the messages, but I saw enough on the screen. "I don't want drama. I never agreed to be part of your divorce. This is getting messy." I didn't interfere. I let her watch him vanish all by herself. Then came the financial fallout. She tried to access our shared emergency fund, but it had already been frozen by court order. She called the bank and yelled at the poor manager for 10 minutes, but it didn't help. Every move she made had been anticipated weeks ago. She applied for a new credit card and was denied. Too many recent inquiries. Too much debt in her name. She came to me 2 days later asking to borrow money, just until things settle. I didn't even answer. I just handed her the contact card for my attorney. By week 3, she moved into her condo full-time. I learned from a mutual friend that the place was smaller than she expected, overpriced, and lacking the resort charm the brochure promised. I smiled when I heard that. Sometimes poetic justice is a cramped kitchen and paper-thin walls. Word eventually got around to her family. Her sister called me out of the blue, saying Claire was devastated and didn't know how things went so wrong. I didn't explain. I didn't defend. I just said, Claire made her choices. I made mine. 3 weeks later, I got an email, subject line, "I'm sorry." It was long, emotional, full of regret. She claimed she was in a bad headspace, that she never stopped loving me, that everything got out of hand. She ended it with, "I miss the way you used to look at me, like I was your piece." It should have hurt. A year ago, it might have. But now, I replied with a single sentence. "You gave up peace for excitement. I hope it was worth the price." Then I blocked her email. It wasn't revenge. It was closure. I'd spent so long trying to save someone who never planned to stay. But the future? That was mine again. Claire moved out quietly. No teary goodbye. No dramatic scene. Just a quick note on the fridge. "I'll send someone for the rest of my things." She never did. For weeks, half her closet sat untouched. Dresses still on hangers. Her favorite coffee mug still in the dishwasher. I thought I'd feel something when she left. Anger, grief, relief. But the only thing I really felt was stillness. A kind of silence that let me breathe for the first time in years. My lawyer, Mr. Hendricks, was efficient and ruthless in a quiet way. He'd seen it all before: the secret bank accounts, the quiet betrayals, the schemes dressed up as misunderstandings. He filed the full asset protection motion, laid out my financial history, and presented documented proof of Claire's spending on her new life. "She'll try to claim emotional manipulation," he said. "We counter with receipts, timelines, and discretion. Judges don't like drama. They like facts." We had plenty of those. The divorce hearing was scheduled 6 weeks out. In the meantime, I focused on reclaiming my life. Not just what was left of it, but everything I'd put on hold. I went back to reading each morning, picked up my guitar again, started helping my nephew with his college tuition planning. Funny thing happens when someone who drained you finally leaves. You realize how much energy you still have. Claire, on the other hand, wasn't doing so well. One of her old friends, a mutual acquaintance named Denise, called me out of the blue. "I probably shouldn't tell you this," she said, but Claire's unraveling. She thought Tanner was serious. "Turns out he's not even divorced yet." That explained a lot. Denise continued. "She's couch surfing now. Can't afford the condo. Her credit's shot." I didn't ask for these updates. But people love a redemption arc, and just as much, they love to watch a downfall unfold. Meanwhile, Claire's lawyer reached out with a settlement offer. She wanted half the remaining savings, plus the car and one of the investment properties we'd jointly bought 2 years earlier. Mr. Hendricks smirked. "We're rejecting it." Politely. Instead, we submitted a response with itemized expenses that Claire had hidden or diverted during the marriage, totaling nearly $78,000. Between the lease, wire transfers, and misused credit, she was on shaky ground. Our counteroffer: a clean split of remaining assets after deducting misappropriated funds. No alimony. No additional requests. A week later, I got a message from Claire. No apology this time. "No, I miss you. Just, you're really going through with this, huh?" I didn't reply. She had every opportunity to fix things, long before lawyers, long before Tanner. But she made her choice when she took off the mask. 2 weeks before the court date, I visited my old friend Larry, an accountant who now taught small business finance. He offered me a chance to co-invest in a startup he was launching. I said yes. Not out of revenge, not to show anyone, just because I could. Claire once told me I was boring. Safe. Predictable. She said it like it was a flaw. But you know what predictable means? It means dependable. Steady. Prepared. The judge saw it too. At the hearing, Claire looked different. Smaller. She wore a blazer too large for her frame, like she was trying to look professional after months of pretending to be someone else. When the judge asked for her explanation regarding the concealed finances and third-party expenditures, she stammered. Her attorney tried to spin it, said she was seeking emotional stability during a stressful period. But the timeline and bank statements told a different story. The judge ruled in my favor. Claire was granted no alimony. Assets were split only after deducting her unauthorized spending. She lost the car, the investment condo, and access to my insurance policies. Afterward, outside the courtroom, she approached me. "You didn't have to do this," she said quietly. "You could have left with your dignity instead of taking mine." I looked at her. This woman who once shared my bed, who once cried in my arms, who once promised we'd build a life together, now standing in front of me, blaming me for the damage she caused. "No," I said. "You did that part all by yourself." She walked away without another word. I never saw her again. I heard rumors, of course, that she tried to go back to teaching part-time, that she moved in with her sister, that she briefly tried to rekindle something with Tanner before his actual wife found out. But by then, I was gone from all of it. Gone from that chapter. Gone from the weight. Gone from her. I sold the house. Bought a smaller place near a lake. Started coaching at the community center, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. And every time someone asked me what happened between me and Claire, I gave the same answer. She thought I was her safety net. I turned out to be the floor she fell through. It took time for things to feel normal again. At first, it was the little things. No more second-guessing every noise at night. No more half conversations over cold dinners. No more walking on eggshells in my own house. The silence, once eerie, became comfortable, peaceful. My days started to fill with things that brought me quiet satisfaction. I woke up early, not out of anxiety or habit, but because I wanted to. I started volunteering twice a week, financial literacy classes for single fathers and newly retired men who had no idea what to do with their pensions. The kind of men I used to be before everything fell apart and forced me to learn the hard way. Some called it a midlife transformation, but to me, it was just trimming the dead branches. One afternoon, as I was walking back from the store, I passed the park where Claire and I used to walk on Sundays. There was a bench under an old maple tree. Our bench, we used to call it. We hadn't sat there in years. She'd always say she was too tired, too busy, or that the bugs would bite. Now, I sat alone. And for once, I didn't feel lonely. That's when I saw Denise again, Claire's old friend. She spotted me first and waved. She looked genuinely surprised. "Wow," she said. "You look lighter." "Divorce will do that," I said with a small smile. She laughed awkwardly, then sat beside me. We talked. Nothing deep, just about life, work, how much had changed. She mentioned that she hadn't heard from Claire in weeks. That the last she knew, Claire was staying with a cousin in Delaware, trying to figure things out. "Do you think she regrets it?" I asked. Denise hesitated. "She regrets not getting the money." I appreciated the honesty. "I think she regrets not having a backup plan," she added. "She thought she had Tanner. Thought she had your savings. Turns out she had neither." We sat in silence for a moment, watching kids run across the grass with kites. The world, for all its noise, had become oddly quiet for me, in a good way. Denise finally said, "You know, she always called you boring." "I know, but I think boring might be underrated." I chuckled. "That's what I'm learning." We parted with a friendly nod. No sparks, no promises, just two people who had both seen the same storm from different windows. That night, I made a list. Not of goals or tasks. I had enough of those. This was a list of lessons. Things I had learned the hard way, from loving someone who only loved what I could give her. Don't ignore red flags just because you love the person waving them. Loyalty doesn't mean silence. Peace is more valuable than passion when passion comes with poison. If someone makes you feel like an option, remove yourself from their list. Always keep the receipts. Literally and metaphorically. By now, the dust from the divorce had settled. The money was safe. The accounts were clean. The house was sold, and I'd downsized into a beautiful 2-bedroom cabin near a quiet lake. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. And more importantly, no one resented me for it. A month later, I received a certified letter from Claire's attorney. I expected drama, maybe a last-ditch attempt at appeal, or a complaint about how I'd ruined her life. Instead, it was just a formal declaration. She had waived all remaining claims. It was over. Legally, financially, completely. At the bottom was a handwritten note in Claire's script. It said, "I thought leaving you would set me free. Turns out, I was running from the only person who ever truly stood by me. I'm sorry, not that it matters anymore." She was right. It didn't. But I didn't throw the letter away. I folded it neatly and put it in the back of a drawer. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. A reminder of who I had become because of what I endured. One evening, as I watched the sunset from the dock behind my cabin, I thought about how close I'd come to being someone else. A man who might have stayed in a broken marriage out of fear. A man who would have accepted betrayal in exchange for the illusion of security. A man who would have spent his days wondering when the next lie would come. Instead, I became someone better. Not bitter. Not broken. Just better. A few weeks later, I was invited to speak at a local men's group. Retired veterans, small business owners, widowers. Real people. They asked me to talk about rebuilding after loss. I stood in front of 30 men and told them my story. Not to vent, not to seek pity, but to show them that survival isn't the same as defeat. That being left doesn't mean you're less. That sometimes, being discarded is just the universe clearing space for peace. Afterward, one man came up and shook my hand. "You didn't just rebuild," he said. "You upgraded." Maybe I did. A year passed. Not a long time in the grand scheme of things, but long enough for the world to look different. Long enough for my reflection in the mirror to feel familiar again, but also new. Sharper. Older, yes. But stronger, too. I didn't think about Claire often anymore. At first, I expected I would. You don't spend years building a life with someone and then simply walk away clean. But as time went on, the memories stopped stinging. They just became facts. Parts of a chapter that closed when the pen ran out of excuses. Every so often, I'd get a message from someone who once knew us both. "Have you heard from Claire? She's in Florida now. She's back teaching part-time. She's dating someone new. Each time, I gave the same answer. I wish her peace. Because I did. Not for her sake, but for mine. Bitterness is a chain you wear willingly. I cut mine a long time ago. My days were now filled with quiet things. Mornings with coffee and the local paper, afternoons tinkering with woodworking projects, evenings walking by the lake. I still volunteered at the community center. I even started mentoring a young man going through a tough divorce. Life wasn't exciting in the cinematic sense, but it was mine. Fully mine. One afternoon, while sorting old files in my study, I found an envelope labeled Claire, Final. I'd nearly forgotten about it. Inside were old receipts, bank statements, screenshots, and the letter her lawyer sent after the divorce. I sat with it for a few minutes. Then, without ceremony, I fed the whole thing through the shredder. It was time. Not long after that, something strange happened. Claire's daughter from her first marriage, Olivia, reached out. She was 25 now, working in social services, and living 2 states away. We hadn't spoken in years. Her message read, "I know it's been a long time, but I wanted to say thank you. For helping with school. For being kind. For being more of a father than my real one ever was." I hadn't expected that. I responded the only way I could, honestly. "Thank you, Olivia. I'm proud of the woman you've become. You always had more strength than you knew." We exchanged a few more messages that week. Nothing heavy, just reconnection. The kind that reminded me not everything tied to Claire had been a loss. Some things, like Olivia's respect, were worth remembering. A few months later, I was invited to speak again, this time at a retirement community. The theme was second chances. I told a room full of men and women that life, no matter how late in the game, could still surprise you. One man in the front row raised his hand. "Do you regret anything?" he asked. I didn't hesitate, only that I waited so long to choose myself. There were nods, quiet ones, the kind that come from shared experience. After the talk, a woman approached me. Her name was Susan. She was in her early 60s, a widow for almost 10 years, and ran a small book club at the center. "I liked your story," she said. It wasn't bitter. That's rare. We talked for over an hour, about books, travel, broken trust, and unexpected healing. I didn't feel the need to impress her, and she didn't try to fix me. It felt easy. That night, as I walked back to my car, I thought about something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. Not the dramatic, world-shifting kind. Just the small, steady one that quietly says, maybe things can still be good. A few weeks later, Susan invited me to one of her book club meetings. I didn't know half the titles they discussed, but I showed up anyway. I listened. I laughed. I stayed for cookies and tea. And I noticed something. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the man who had been left behind. I felt like the man who had moved forward. Claire was now a memory, a lesson more than a person, a story I'd lived through and survived. She didn't haunt me anymore. I didn't need revenge or vindication. Just this life, calm, steady mine. One spring morning, I got a postcard in the mail. No return address. Just a simple message, handwritten in all caps. I was wrong. I hope you're happy. I didn't need to wonder who sent it. I just smiled and set it aside. Because I was happy. And that was enough.